Hello and welcome to Gaming Gaiden. It's been a while since I last produced a video in this series, but today is a special anniversary I wanted to talk about. As of the recording of this video, today is February 26, 2016. Exactly 20 years ago, a set of historically significant RPGs came out in Japan. These games. Or, to be more precise, these games. Or, more accurately, these games. I do own the box for green, I just don't know where it is at the moment. These are Pocket Monsters Red and Green, the first incarnations of Pokemon ever. These games forever changed the Nintendo gaming landscape with a legacy akin to the original Super Mario Bros. Or Legend of Zelda. 1996 was towards the very tail end of the original Game Boy's lifespan, with most big game names already available for the system. There were still some notable games in 1996, including the outstanding Mole Mania, but after the failure of the Virtual Boy, Nintendo returned to the Game Boy, giving gamers something to hold them over until the then-planned 1997 release of Project Atlantis, which would be eventually released under its final name of Game Boy Advance a whole 4 years later. But Pocket Monsters unexpectedly became such a massive phenomenon in Japan, they single-handedly gave the Game Boy a sales boost not seen since the system first launched in 1989. This effectively delayed the arrival of the Game Boy Advance significantly. All this said, the games wouldn't arrive in the West for another full 2 years. So let's take a look at the boxes of these original Pocket Monsters games. First, comparing the exterior package of Pocket Monsters Aka and Pokemon Red. Japanese Game Boy boxes are much smaller than their North American design, as you can see as I lay the two on top of each other. If you compare the sides here, you'll see Pocket Monsters and the kanji Aka, meaning red. And for the American version, simply Pokemon, but it does have an illustration of Cubone for some reason. But it is interesting to note that the Japanese box lists the game's product code, DMG-PA-PAJ, which means Dot Matrix Game Pocket Monsters Aka Project Alpha Japan. On the front is a nifty little graphic proudly displaying the GameLink cable support to trade and battle. This is something that is far more cryptic in the North American version, which states only, "Link to blue version to catch all 150 monsters." Actually, this is one of the first times Pokemon are ever actually called monsters in English. On the back of the box, you can see two screenshots showing what the game looks like when played on a Game Boy or Game Boy Pocket, as well as on the Super Game Boy. This versus the Japanese box, which only shows monochromatic screenshots. Note the screenshot of Cerulean City is the same on both packages. The Japanese box also very specifically mentions Super Game Boy support, even featuring the eye-catching Super Game Boy logo. So now let's take a look and see what you got in the original box. First things first is the cartridge, of course, which comes in a very nice hard plastic carrying case. Open it up and here it is, the original cart of the original version of Red. Notice the game is on a standard gray Game Boy shell. This differs quite considerably from the version that came into the West, on a fully red cartridge, similar to the Donkey Kong lands how they came on yellow cartridges previously. This was the complete opposite of a few years prior with Famicom games, as they were all extremely colorful in Japan, with the North American versions being all gray and uniform. So let's continue to see what else came in the box. Now let's take a look at the manual for Pocket Monsters Aka. Of course, the manual is entirely in Japanese, but it's full color and there's a lot of imagery here that would have excited many Japanese kids back in the day. Notice that all screenshots are all grayscale, meaning they must have been taken on a Wide Boy or something similar. Towards the back is a basic incomplete index of some of the monsters you'll see early on to get kids started. Next, this is just a typical warning card warning against the dangers of using copying devices and game genies and that sort of thing. Nothing too exciting. Next, this pamphlet advertises the Game Boy camera. Why was there an ad for the Pocket Camera with the Pokemon games? Well, that's because the Pocket Camera, or Game Boy Camera, was actually developed by Game Freak. Like Pokemon, the Game Boy Camera didn't come to the West until 1998, having 2 years to grow a Japanese fanbase almost as large as that of Pocket Monsters itself. And finally, here's a nifty, but pointless map of the Kanto region depicted in the game. So let's just spread this out for you guys. For those of you who don't know, Kanto is the real-life name of the region of Japan where Tokyo resides, with the geography of the Pokemon Kanto roughly matching that of the real-life Kanto region. So there you go. The same map was also included in the North American versions of the games. Next, let's take a look at the manual for the North American version. Mostly the same information, and my manual isn't in the best of condition, but notice that all the screenshots all come from the pre-alpha version of the game. Look here, it reads, "The Brock wants to fight." The Brock. Also note that unlike the Japanese version, all screenshots shown here are of the Super Game Boy, offering some limited color. Other than that, both manuals are pretty much the same. When Pocket Monsters first hit shelves in 1996, they were sold in two versions, red and green. Pocket Monsters Blue was actually released many months later, originally only available through a mail order to subscribers of Koro Comic. As I open it, let me just explain the situation for Blue. Far more than simply a promotional exclusive, Blue offered fixes for many of the game's glitches present in the original Red and Green, updated the sound engine, and offered completely redrawn sprites. Due to the advantages Blue had, Nintendo of America opted to use Blue as the base for both Red and Green, adapting them to use Blue's engine. This means that actually, the English version of Blue is in fact green, and the real Blue was never released outside of Japan. Now, again comparing the Japanese Blue to the North American Blue cartridge, you'll see that they are again quite different. Moving on, let's take a quick glance at the manual. Same information, no real differences here. Finally, let's take a look at Green, which as I said before, was released in North America as Blue. Nothing really to say here, just note that, like the others, it's on a standard gray cartridge. Well anyway guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and I'll see you guys next time.